Someone said life begins at 40. I had to have a Google just to find out who it were. I got the name of a 70s TV programme. John Lennon wrote a song of the same name, but whoever it was, they weren't kidding. Because when I turned 40, in the space of 7 months, I was referred, assessed and formally diagnosed as autistic, as well as receiving a diagnosis of dyslexia and dyspraxia. Now, I'm quite happy to talk about my diagnosis. In fact, it helps me a lot, but I can't help other people's opinions or feelings when I do talk about it. I mean, I get people who have come to me and said, well, you don't look autistic, or how can you be autistic? You've got a degree. And under my breath, I kind of want to say, well, you don't look stupid. There's not a specific look or type of what autism or what an autistic person looks like. We don't act or behave like Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory or Dustin Hoffman from Rayman. We don't wear ear defenders just to cancel out the noise. We all don't sit at home playing computer games on an Xbox all day. We don't wear sunflower lanyards or wear badges just to kind of state that we've got an undiagnosed or a diagnosis and disability. Some people even don't feel comfortable saying that they're autistic. And I get it. Neither do we flap his arm back and forth or rock in a chair or spin around in a circle when we're stimming. When I stim, I'll admit it's not a pretty sight. My brain's going like 5,000 miles faster than what it should be, whether that is if I'm in a stressful situation or there's been a last minute change of plan, or even when I'm overstimulated or when I'm excited and I'm full of ideas, I do it. It's not like I've got an on-off switch. I can't control as and when it happens, but believe me, I wish I did have a switch or a pill that I took every day just to make my brain go quieter. It certainly made my life easier. My story isn't unique because there's a lost generation of undiagnosed autistic people who are now discovering their authentic selves, that I'm finding out that they were never broken, that they're not broken, and that they don't need fixing. These people would have been at school seen as the naughty kid, the crybaby, the boffin, the kid that the teacher told wouldn't amount to much when they left school, like me and you did. Labels that restricted us all as lives, and yet we've embraced them when we get to adult life, laughed it off, put a positive spin on it, said it's part of his personality. We don't go looking for a neurodiverse condition and saying that we've got autism or ADHD just to say that we're fashionable or trendy, or just to get all the government handouts possible, a golden ticket. When late diagnosed autistic like us were growing up as kids, autism and neurodiversity was never part of the conversation. Based on my own experiences, we go through some sort of trauma in our lives where we feel that we've got no other option but to look into it, that there's something else that's wrong with us. And then there's the battle that you've got to try and get somebody to believe you, trying to get a GP referral for an autism assessment. And yet when you go to a GP's, you're sort of railroaded down this path of mental health and mental illness, where the fact that even the possibility that you may have got a neurodiverse condition is given complete total disregard. I mean, I lost count how many times I asked my GP for an autism assessment, and yet I was diagnosed as being depressed and placed on antidepressants. And this became like a rinse and repeat service, to the point where I was diagnosed as depressed and on 150 milligrams of sertraline a day, walking around like an absolute zombie. And it wasn't until I got my dyslexia and my dyspraxia diagnoses through a workplace assessment that my GP actually finally agreed to send me for an autism assessment. Many who receive a late diagnosis of autism will tell you like, oh, somebody switched the lights on. I get it. When I got my diagnosis, it kind of explained a lot about my behaviours, even my crazy ones. Like, why change my job 12 to 18 months? Why, when it comes to specialist interests, I get that obsessed that it comes all or nothing? Why ask for a cheeseburger with no cheese? Why I'm unable to make friends and maintain friendships? Why every time someone puts brown sauce on the plate, I have to go into another room? Why I can't maintain a conversation? The reality is that those lights are actually head frights from the incoming monster truck that's going to hit full pelt, because I had just been told by a healthcare professional that I've spent the first 40 years of my life misdiagnosed and completely misunderstood. That I was never mentally ill, that I was never depressed, that I never needed antidepressants. I was just suffering from autistic burnout. I just felt this complete, roller coaster of emotions, anger, guilt, resentment, questioning absolutely every life decision I've made, and it sent me on a complete downward spiral, which it would do for anybody. But fortunately for me, my diagnosis came with aftercare and signposts for support. I got one-to-one peer support group, sessions with an autism psychologist, counselling. I have mentorship every week through Access to Work and Autism Plus. Now, what I've received should be sort of like the blueprint, and I'll go on record and say I haven't even spent a penny, not on my diagnosis or any on sort of the post-support care. Everything's either come from the NHS or local charities, and what I've received should be the blueprint for everybody. But we all know that's not the case. Some people just say, oh, you've got autism, here's a bunch of leaflets off your trot. And I had that my experience with my son when he got his autism diagnosis. And it's the kids like him and the parents that need the support way more than what I do. We joked all the time that I might be autistic or neurodiverse in some sort of way, but there was never a warrant or a need from me or from anybody else to kind of investigate it further. Despite the fact I was changing my job more times than I was changing my pants, despite the fact that I was falling out with people all the time, I was doing all right and I was successful in my own way. That all changed when I decided I wanted to become a nurse and do a foundation nursing degree. I spent about almost a decade working in healthcare because I actually wanted to help people that needed to be helped and have a job that served a bit of a purpose. During that time, I did a higher education diploma. I got into the NHS. I retook my Maths and English GCSE some 22 years after I failed them at school, and then got myself a place on the trainee nursing associate apprenticeship scheme, all unknowing at the time that I was autistic. The first day I enrolled was the day that we went into lockdown in COVID-19, March 2020. And looking back now, doing a nursing degree at the height of a pandemic and lockdown was probably the very least of my worries. For 2 years, while I was on base placement, I just experienced unprecedented levels of anxiety. I can just remember walking from where I parked my car to the hospital and just kind of seeing the ambulances parked outside Rhesus and in an absolute panic, not knowing what I was going to expect for the day. I'd be lucky sometimes if I made it through the male changing rooms without running out or running into the manager's office. Just kind of the buzzers and the crying and the screams you used to hear day in, day out, the unpredictability of not knowing what's going to happen, knowing that I would probably spend the next 13 hours on shift being ignored by my colleagues. I was branded unenthusiastic, uncomfortable to work with. I was accused of blatantly lying in my reflections. I had statements made against me by nurses with all these false accusations. And then there was all the meetings that I was summoned to. I lost count. Professional behaviour meetings, student support meetings, action plan meetings. And then there's the meetings that I wasn't even invited to, where all the nurses would get the story straight so they could vet against me. And yet all I was doing was what was being asked of me, but was made to feel at fault. Then there was the classic emails that were sent to me by healthcare professionals and the head of education at the time that were about me, but were sent to me by accident. But they were written in such a negative manner, so I very much knew what their opinions were about me early on. In my second year alone, I had to get 60 testimonies from nurses just about my conduct in practice and that I was meeting my proficiencies. And the nurses that I kind of speak to now when I talk to them about it said that that's absolutely obscene amount and should never been asked for. But at the time, it was what I'd expected by my practice assessor and the hierarchy above. And yet, other students that were in my cohort and doing the same course as me at the same time, at the same hospital, at the same university, were not even being asked for a fraction of this to what I was. One nurse kind of said to me, well, you're under so much scrutiny because we don't want another Beverly Allen on your hands. I mean, I could sit here and laugh about it and say, well, it's not every day you get compared to a serial killer, but it's just so disgusting and offensive that kind of people would kind of think that. And what kind of shocks me now, sort of like 2-3 years on from all of it, is that all these comments and all these statements and all these emails all came from qualified and experienced nurses, either in high-end positions in the NHS or responsible for nurturing our future nurses at university. And if they're saying and making and writing these comments about me, then what the hell are they thinking about patients who are autistic or have learning disabilities? I lost count the amount of times I almost threw in the towel. But I rather kind of fail trying than kind of walk away and not know what might happen. And yet, kind of in the end, support from my loved ones and kind of hard work and a bit of middle-age resilience kind of got me through it, and I passed and I got my nursing degree. And yet, there's so many people I've kind of spoken to that have either walked away or failed the degree and then later received an autism diagnosis. I mean, how many kind of nurses have we lost because of that? I mean, those nurses that were kind of involved in my studies would kind of look at this, or the bits that I did last year, and kind of say, well, we did support him, we bent over backwards for him. Well, clearly, knowing that we know now that wasn't the case at all. And if my diagnosis had been found while I was studying, I would have been protected under the Equality Act. At the end of the day, we're all nurses, and I just kind of hope that if they do see this, that they use it as a period of reflection to kind of look at how they did things and what they would do if they came across a student like me that was struggling, that potentially may have an undiagnosed neurodiverse disability. My recent practice supervisor training, which all nurses have to do every year, said that the signs for a struggling student are lacking motivation, lacking confidence, ringing in late, ringing in sick, constantly making errors all the time, or being overconfident and cocky. For me, all those things just scream burnout, because at no point at all did it say that potentially a student nurse or a trainee nurse associate is struggling because they have an undiagnosed hidden disability like autism or ADHD or dyslexia. Now, luckily, I've had conversations with my workplace, and they are looking to consider and to include neurodiversity into it. But that's just one employer. Why stop there? This needs to be done for every single NHS trust, every single university, every single private care provider that recruits nurses and nurse associates. I mean, we have the Alan McGowan training now for looking after patients with autism and learning disabilities. So why can't we do the same for student nurses and for new employees coming into the NHS and into healthcare? Now, granted, there's people out there with level 3 autism where they need support at all times for all aspects of their lives. But for the autistic peoples that are educated, that have degrees, that can work, there needs to be opportunities for them. And their lived experience can be vital to the workplace and to, in particular, to the nursing profession and into the healthcare sector. Autism isn't, as people call, a superpower, because tell me a superpower that makes you feel absolutely knackered in every sense of the word. That the masking, the trying to fit in, being the black sheep who's lost count, how many times you've dyed your wool white just trying to fit in and follow the herd. Yes, autism is a disability, but it comes with lots of abilities too. And being autistic should neither be seen as a burden or an excuse to try and achieve what you want out of life. People who are autistic or have a neurodiverse condition shouldn't be scared or frightened to disclose it when they're applying for a job or to go on a uni course. And neither should employers and those in education see it the same way when they're recruiting. As long as the correct support is given and reasonable adjustments are adhered to, and that could mean working set days, set hours, set shifts, working in a place of interest, having certain equipment, aids, fidget toys, anything that's going to kind of make us productive in work and make us want to come to work. For other individuals with autism, It might be the exact opposite of what I've just said, because they thrive on the unpredictability, like those who have got ADHD as well as autism. It's true what they say. Because you've met one autistic person, you really have just met one autistic person. And no two autistic people require the same care needs and the same level of support. And it really is all about catering for the individual. And for managers and recruiters and employers, that's going to mean putting the time and the effort and the money in. It's going to mean making sure that reasonable adjustments are adhered to. Flexible working requests are accepted and implemented. It's going to mean, at very least, having a conversation with your neurodivergent staff, even if you're thinking about making some changes or moving the goalposts. It's going to mean accepting the fact that neurodivergent staff are going to have days where they don't feel sociable, that they're going to decline invitations to the staff Christmas party. It's going to mean accepting the fact that we're going to work a bit differently, that things are going to take longer, and that we're going to complete tasks in a way that, I'll be honest, is going to annoy some neurotypicals. But most of all, it means accepting the fact and changing your mindset about neurodiversity within the workplace. Most of all, it means changing the attitude and the mindset and the approach of bringing in neurodivergent staff into the workplace. The recent Butland report has given lots of stats and information now. It's a positive start, but is action going to be took on it? Or is it just going to be another report for the lip service? Especially now that there's been a change of government. There's people like me and like you and many other autistic people out there that will continue to support and challenge and advocate, because at the other side of the fence, there's always going to be stigma and ignorance. There's always going to be hate speech towards autism and autistic people. These outrageous comments, these uneducated conspiracy theories from people who just want to make a name for themselves on social media, or your D-list celebrities who just want to remain in the limelight just for a few more red carpet invites. I mean, I saw an advert for a podcast where he described autistic people as weak and delinquent. And yet, when I listened to the podcast, the bloke who said this said he'd got ADHD. Now, last time I checked, ADHD comes under the same neurodiverse umbrella as autism. This is what we're up against. And even in 2024, autism is still a dirty word and a taboo subject when there's absolutely no reason for it to be. I don't want anybody to go through the challenges than what I did. It's why I'm doing this. It's why I did the article for the Nursing Times last year. It's why I did the podcast. I want to do my bit to make sure that neurodiversity is included. I want managers and employers to utilise the neurodivergent staff, meeting both their learning, the sensory needs and playing to their strengths. Managers, employers, assessors, those that work in education, learning and development need to utilise neurodivergent staff better, rather than expecting us into this one-size-fits-all stereotypical, or should I really say neurotypical box. There's autistic people that want to come to work, that want to contribute to society. I'm living proof, you're living proof that autistic people can work and be successful and have successful careers. I mean, I've been qualified as a nurse associate for 2.5 years now because I've been allowed to come to work and be myself. Just because you've got this piece of paper, this autism diagnosis from a consultant on NHS letterheaded paper, doesn't mean your life's over. It's only begun. It never stopped you before wanting to do the things you wanted to do and achieving the things you wanted to do. So why should it stop you now? For me, being autistic is a badge of honour.